Okay, good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me back. It's always lovely to speak in the Torah way. I've chosen 4 or 5 ideas that I'd like to share with you. Hopefully we'll have time to get through all of them. Just different ideas on the Parsha. Some may be familiar, some less familiar. The opening idea is from the opening psukim of this week's Parsha. Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avram, Avram hoidedes Yitzchak. These are the generations of Yitzchak, Yitzchak ben Aboim Shana, he's 40 years old, Bekachtei es Rivka, when he gets married. Vayet ha-Yitzchak Lashem. Sadly, they are barren. Sadly, they do not have children. And Yitzchak davens, he is 40 years old when he gets married. Vayet ha-Yitzchak Lashem and Ishtoi, this is 20 years later. Kiakari, they're davening, and they're not answered until for another 20 years. When it says in the pasuk, "Vaye'et har Yitzchak Lashem lenoichach ishtoi," what exactly does lenoichach ishtoi mean? So Rashi explains, lenoichach means opposite. The pasuk says, "Lenoichach ishtoi ze oimed bezav v'zu u'mispalel v'zu oimedes bezav v'zu mispaleles." So Yitzchak is standing in one corner, Rivka standing in the other corner. Noichach means opposite. The Rashbam, however, the grandson of Rashi, says that's not pshat in Noichach. He says different pshat. He says Noichach means bishvil. That means Vayet ha-Yitzchak Lashem le-Noichach ishtoi. He's davening on behalf of. He's davening for his wife. The question, of course, is, well, what about himself? So says the Meshech Chochmah, very interesting Meshech Chochmah. Vayet ha-Yitzchak lenoichach ishtoi pirush bishvil ishtoi, quoting the Rashba. Ki hu haya batuach sheyeh lo zera. Yitzchak was confident that he would have children. U'kamoisha Hashem yisbarach l'Avram, because after all, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had given a promise to Avram Avinu. V'karasa es shema Yitzchak, you'll have a child who will be called Yitzchak. V'hakimoisi es brisi itoi lebris olam lezare acharov. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has told Avraham, there'll be a covenant through you, through your son Yitzchak and his descendants. So clearly Yitzchak has had an assurance from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he will have children. Rak yitochen sheyolid meish acheres. It could be that the mother of these children will be somebody else, won't be Rivka. Lochein, therefore Yitzchak davened, his spalel k'mosh isab medrash, like the medrash says, shekol ma sheyolid yeloi mitzadekes halos. That whichever children he would have, would he merit to have children through this lady, this Sadekes, this Rivka. So therefore, says the Meshech Chochmah, that's why, that's Pshat Vayet HaYitzchak Hashem L'noichach ishtoi, on behalf of his wife, because he wanted very much to have children through Rivka. He was confident about himself because of the assurance from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But he wanted Rivka to be the mother of these children. Now, the Rabbi Yaakov Benda has 2 lovely Sfarim on Chumash, and he makes a very interesting observation. He says, you see from here, that the very establishment of Klal Yisrael is built on the tefillah of one Yid for another Yid. That the whole foundation of the Jewish people is built on a tefillah of Yitzchak for somebody else, for his wife Rivka. And that's really what it's all about. He quotes, I forget who, a certain Rosh Yeshiva who says, we said this morning in davening in the Halukos, beautiful words. Take a look at the third box on the page. Al tiftuchu, if you're listening online, you can email me j.golker@gmail.com, I'll send you the handout. Haluka halinafshes Hashem. Al tiftuchu bin divin, we said this morning, don't put your trust in princes, bevenodom she'inachua, and people who haven't got any salvation. Ashrei shel Yaakov be'ezroi, praiseworthy is he in whose help is the God of Yaakov. Sivrei al Hashem Eloikav, his hope is in Hashem, his God. Oisem mishpat la'ashukim, he does mishpat to the downtrodden. Noisen lechem l'reivim, he gives bread to the hungry. Hashem matir asurim, he releases those who are held hostage. How pertinent now. Hashem pakeach ivrim, he opens the eyes of those who can't see. Hashem zokev kfifim, those who are bent over, he straightens up. Oyev tzadikim, Hashem shomer es gerim, yosem v'almona, that he encourages the yosem, the almona. V'derech rishom yavis. Interestingly, we've got a whole range of human suffering over here, and yet we're davening for everybody. Tefillah is always b'loshen rabim, refo'enu. It's always in the loshen of b'loshen rabim. But the final response is Yimlech Hashem la'olam. That when we talk about the whole range of human suffering, hopefully not everyone is suffering from the entire range. But of course, in there lies that principle that we daven for another person, somebody else who is suffering from that. There's a lovely anecdote about Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, that one Rosh Hashanah, one of the boys in the Mir, came to the Rosh Hashiva of Nosson Tzvi and said to him, what should my focus be, my tefillah be in Rosh Hashanah? Should I be davening for Yiras Shamayim, for success in learning, for a whole list of possible things? And Rav Nosson Tzvi, who of course we know had a debilitating Parkinson's disease, and his speech was very difficult for him, he just said 2 words in response. When the Bocha said, what should I be davening for? He just said, somebody else. Somebody else. Wow. Daven for somebody else. Astonishing. That's the Meshech Chochma anyway, L'noichach Ishtei. Now I can't mention this pasuk, Vayetze Yitzchak Hashem L'noichach Ishtei, the pasuk Kiakari, without mentioning another Meshech Chochma. I may have mentioned this once before, but you always get me on half term, so it's normally around Toldos and Vayetze. So listen to this Meshech Chochma, it's unbelievable. Take a look at the first box. Vayetze Yitzchak Hashem L'noichach Ishtei. That Yitzchak is davening L'noichach Ishtei according to Rashi, opposite according to Rashbam, on behalf of Kiakarahi, that she is barren, she can't have children. Unusually, the word he, Kiakarahi, look how it's spelled, Hey Vav Aleph. Normally you spell the word he, Hey Yud Aleph. So the Meshech Chochma is troubled. Why is it written here, Hey Vav Aleph? Says the Meshech Chochma. But Vav Kosov, it's written with the Vav. Yeah, I'm in the paragraph number 2. Valsat HaRemez, says the Meshech Chochma, this is alluding to something. Now we know Rivka, here there's some spare sheets here, that the Rivka was 3 years old when she got married. Remember that Yitzchak was 37 at the Akedah. 3 years later, he was told after the Akedah that Rivka had just been born. He gets married at 40, so Rashi does the cheshbon, she's 3 years old. Okay. Then now, 20 years later, Yitzchak becomes a father when he's 60. So how old is Rivka when she becomes a mother? She's 23. They wait 20 years, she gets married at 3, she's 23 years old. Now, says the Meshech Chochma, because if Yitzchak was 60, he gets married when he's 40, they were married 20 years, she's 3 when she gets married, she's 23. Now, says the Meshech Chochma, there's a Gemara in Yevamos. The Gemara in Yevamos says that for the first 11 years of a woman's life, she's too young to have children. Biologically, she's not able to have children. So how many years was she actually barren for? 23 minus 11, 12. The gematria of he, Vav Aleph, 5 and 6 and 1 is 12. So Kiakara she was barren for 12 years. Says the Meshech Chochma, for Imkein Lois Akara Rak Yud Beis Shonim, she was barren for a total of 12 years. He with a Vav is gematria Yud Beis. Amazing. So that's why the Pasuk spells it without the Yud, it spells it in this unusual way. Okay, let's move on. The Parsha continues. The main centerpiece of the Parsha is, of course, the brachas. Yeah, the Parsha of the brachas where Yaakov goes in, is instructed by his mother that he has to go in and get the brachas. Chazal tell us that the future of the Jewish people depends on him getting the brachas. If the brachas go to Esau, we're in trouble. So what happens? Rivka tells Yaakov that he's got to go and get the brachas, and he dresses up as Esau. There says the pasuk Vatika in paragraph 3, Vatikach Rivka es bigdei Esau bino hagadol. She goes into the cupboard and she gets Esau's clothes. Bigdei hachamudois, the pasuk says hachamudois asher ito babayis vatalbesh es Yaakov b'no hakoton, and she puts this jacket on Yaakov. What? Okay, so the shaila is, what are these bigdei chamudois? Says Rashi, nekiyos. That's the targum. Dova'acher shechomad oison min nimrod. That's what we're familiar with. Chamudois is from the lashon of choymeid, lo sachmo, don't covet, don't be jealous. And this is the jacket that Esau coveted from Nimrod. What was special about this jacket? What was famous about this jacket? Rashi says previously that this was the hunting jacket. It was a magic jacket that you put it on for hunting, and somehow magically it's almost like a magnet, that the animal would be very docile and walk towards you and stretch out its neck, and it made hunting a doddle, easy.
What was he wearing it when he was going?
So where was Esav at this moment in time? When Rivka went in to get Esav's jacket, to give it to Yaakov to go in and to get the brachas and to pretend to be Esav, where was Esav at this moment? He was hunting. So the obvious question is, why wasn't Esav wearing this famous hunting jacket, if ever there was a time?
Because it's not much fun hunting if it's too easy.
You're on the right track, Mr. Bloom. Let me tell you the answer. The answer is, this question I first heard from Rabbi Harman. It's an obvious question, really. I heard it, and he said his son, Moshe Yonah, who was then 8 or 9 years old, asked him this question, and he gave the following answer. Let me preface the answer with Kedushas Levi from last week's Parsha. It's an amazing Kedushas Levi. In last week's Parsha, if you took a look at the top of the next page, we have the incident with Rivka at the well. She's being tested by Eliezer. Is she going to do chesed? So he davens, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please send me a siman that the person, the future wife of Yitzchak, should be doing chesed. When I ask her to give me a drink, she'll give my camels. As soon as he finished talking, all of a sudden, all of a sudden this young girl appears. She goes down to the well. Says Rashi, he got very excited. Why? Because he just literally finished saying this prayer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This young lady goes over to the well, the waters rise, a miracle happens to her, and Eliezer thinks, bingo, she's the one. Vayoretz, he starts running, etc. And later the Pesukim, he has the conversation, would you give me to drink? And she goes, on you, I'll give your camels. And she starts drawing the water, and she starts giving all the camels to drink. Says the Ramban on this pasuk, when Rashi says that the Olu Hamayim Nikroso. How did Rashi know? Where did it come from this? Says the Ramban, because Rashi is medayik, because the pasuk says later in pasuk Chof, I've got it at the top of the sheet, Vatishav lechol gemalov. Later it says she drew the water. First time around it says Vaterito, I know she just went to the well. Vatamale kado, why not Vatishav? You draw water from a well. Teretz is, says the Ramban, the first time round when she went to the well, the waters rose to greet her. Then later he asks her to do this chesed, she Vatishov, she has to draw the water. That's what the Ramban says. But the Ramban concludes with a question. But the question is, why? Why did the miracle happen first time round and not the second time round? Why did the miracle that the waters rose to meet her only happen when she first went to the well and not later when she was doing the chesed? Says the Kedushas Levi, Keshmak Kedushas Levi. He says, "V'nir b'siyata d'shmaya." Says Reb Levi Yitzchak. The Gemara says in Psachim, mitzvah strichas kavana. When you do a mitzvah, you got to put kavana into it. It's the effort, it's the kavana, that's the ikka. Therefore, the first time round, when she went to the well, what was the purpose? She was going to the makolet to buy a pint of milk. So they don't need any. So therefore, a miracle happens. Later, she's going to the well to draw water, to give water to Eliezer and to the camels. That's a mitzvah. For mitzvah, I don't want shortcuts. I want to put the effort in. Lefum tzara agra, mitzvah strichas kavana. So the first time, I'll give you a mashal. Yeah, I'll give you a mashal. Imagine, Motzei Shabbos, I go for a walk with my wife. We're going to catch up, busy Shabbos, we're going to catch up on Motzei Shabbos. So I'm coming out of my house, we live in Woodlands, we're coming out of Woodlands, we're going to walk up to Golders Green station and back again. Fine, a 20-minute, half an hour walk. As I'm coming out of Woodlands, a neighbor pulls up, winds down the window. I have to explain to the boys when I say winds down what that means. Yeah. So I wind down. Rabbi, would you like a lift? Yeah. Now, again, I have to explain to my boys what the correct response is in that situation. If I'm going for a walk with my wife, it's inappropriate to take a lift because the purpose of this walk is to spend time with my wife, to go for a walk. No, thank you. But if I was going to Golders Green Station in order to get a train to Euston, because I'm going to Manchester, and my neighbour says, would you like a lift? Then fine. Yeah, that would be very pleasant. Thank you very much. Because I shouldn't confuse the means and the end. The means of going to Golders Green Station to get a train to Manchester is just a means to an end. So if a guy gives me a lift, fine. But if the walk is an end in itself, then it's inappropriate. If drawing the water is the end in itself, that I'm doing the chesed for this person, I don't want shortcuts. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give me miracles. So I've got to. Rabbi Harman told me, I think, I was once in Eretz Bereshit. I don't know if you've been there ever. That it's a place half an hour from Yerushalayim. For kids, it's fabulous. You go there and you have a camel ride, and then you can bake like pita bread. So the fellow, you go into there, and you do different things. You can draw water from a well. How much does a camel drink? Right? And you got 10 camels. It worked out, and to cut a long story short, she was there for 7 hours. Give or take, right? Can you imagine? And you've got this big strapping Eliezer Eved Avram standing there, and you've got this young lady, backwards and forwards and drawing the water 7 hours, because that's the effort. It's Lefum Tzara Agra. But the first time she goes to get the water, she's going to the Makolet to buy a pint of milk. So therefore it's appropriate, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does a chesed for a tzaddikas. That is the answer to our question. Why wasn't Esav wearing his hunting jacket? The teretz is because he is the exemplar of Kibbud Av Ve'em. He doesn't want to take shortcuts. He wants to put in the sweat. He wants to hunt, not necessarily for the enjoyment, but because he wants to do the mitzvah properly, and therefore he doesn't want to take shortcuts. That's using this Kedushas Levi. I'll tell you an interesting thing that and you see this in I mentioned this before, but in Chasidish Svarim, you see this a lot. The hachana for a mitzvah is in a way more important than the actual mitzvah itself. The Chidush Harim says that the Nisuch HaMayim is called a Simchas Beis HaShoeva. What's the Simchas Beis HaShoeva? Because it's the celebration of drawing the water from the well to pour on the Mizbeach. But the mitzvah is the Nisuch HaMayim. But the mitzvah is pouring the water on the Mizbeach. So it should be called the mitzvah's HaNisuch HaMayim. Why Simchas Beis HaShoeva, Simchas Beis HaNisuch, or whatever you want to call it? The answer is because the Chidush Harim says that preparation for a mitzvah, in a way, is more important than the mitzvah itself. The hachana of that's why the Imre Emes says, very geschmack, that the Gemara says that Shiluach Hakan is called the mitzvah kala. Yeah, Rashi says, Shalech Shalach Esaim, he says, L'man yitzav lach v'rachta yomim. So Rashi brings a mitzvah kala she'en bo chisaron kis, for a mitzvah kala, which there's no chisaron kis, Shiluach Hakan, it doesn't cost you anything. Just shoo away the mother birds. If you get why is Shiluach HaKan called a mitzvah kala? Teretz is because the Gemara in Baba Tzia says ki yikar lecha kan tzipor prat lemezuman. You chance upon it. You can't plan it. You can't prepare it. There's a yeshiva in Hitchin, right? You want to go there because they have lots. It's in the forest. They have lots of Shiluach HaKan there. You can go, but you can't plan one beforehand. You can't organize it because that's not Shiluach HaKan. It's Prat Lemezuvim. Says the Imre Emes, that's why it's called the mitzvah kala. Because if there's no hachana for it, if there's no preparation for it, it's a mitzvah kala. It's a lightweight. Interesting. I'll tell you a maisa, which brings out the point. I may have said this before, but it's difficult to know how often you can repeat a story. My good friend Moshe Levi, he said, I asked him, he goes, this is the rule. He says, a joke every 5 years. Right? A story every 2 years. A Dvar Torah, the same shir. that's what he said. Anyway, so this is what he said about this story. This is a Pesach Kron story. There's a fellow. I remember when I was in school, I had a friend who, in high school, from his bar mitzvah for 5 years, he did not miss Tefillah B'tzibur. Didn't miss a minyan. 5 years. But there was a fellow in Israel who was better. For 32 years, he did not miss a single Tefillah B'tzibur. Until one night, when you're off schedule, he had a chasna, and he went to the chasna. He comes home late at night, 2 o'clock in the morning after the chasna, he goes to bed, and suddenly, as his head hits the pillow, Ma'ariv. His 32-year record is on the line. So he can't blow it now. So he jumps out of bed. He runs to the nearest shtibel factory. By the time he gets there, it's 2:30 in the morning. He sees 2 people learning. He says, is there a minyan still? He says, no, Shachar not for another 2 hours, the first minyan. He goes, Ma'ariv, finished. So he starts looking around. In short, he finds 2 other people who haven't yet done Ma'ariv. He's got 3. Yeah, it's nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. Is in trouble. He has an Einfall. He calls up a local taxi company. He says, "Send me 7 taxis, only Jewish drivers." Right? They send 7 drivers. He'd say, "Where are we going? We're not going anywhere. Put your meters on. You're staying here. I need a minyan for Ma'ariv." They came inside. He got his Ma'ariv. The greatest miracle of the story was that afterwards, not a single taxi driver charged him for they were so impressed by him. Not a single, he was willing to pay 7 taxis for the 10, 15 minutes, whatever it was. That's now, what's my point of mentioning this story? Because we all davened Ma'ariv last night, and this fellow davened Ma'ariv that night. Who gets more schar? It's all to do with the hachana you put in. It's all from Tzara Agra. And therefore, mitzvah shrichas kavonas, the more you put in, the more you get out. And that's why even Esav recognized that. That's why he wasn't wearing this hunting jacket, because he was doing kibbud av, and therefore he wanted to put in the effort. Okay, let's press on. 2 more ideas. Paragraph 4. Vayomer bo achicha b'mirma. So what happens? Yaakov gets the brachas, and then exits Esav comes in, and he hears the news that Yaakov's got the brachas. And Yitzchak says to him, "Bo achicha b'mirma, your brother came b'mirma, vayikach birchosecha, and he took your brachas." Rashi says, what's b'mirma? Rashi says b'chachma. Now I must tell you, this Rashi all the years bothered me. It's wherein lies the chachma? Where's the chachma? It was b'mirma. He was dressing up as Esav. What does Rashi mean b'chachma? So I once came across an unbelievable pshat, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. There is a rule we know, we're familiar with, the Mishnah says in Pesachim, Ein maftir nach haPesach afikomen. Rashi tells us in this week's Sedra that this whole story takes place on Seder night. Rashi says, Shnei gedi'im izim. There are 2 goats. Says Rashi, paragraph in the box number 4, V'chi shnei gedi'im hoya machol shel Yitzchak. He needed 2 goats to eat. That's a lot of meat. One was for the dish, and one was his carbon Pesach. It was Seder night. There is a rule in Seder night, it comes out that this meal that they were preparing, the hunting, was the carbon Pesach. You can't eat afterwards. The chachma was that when Yaakov came in and gave his father food, Yitzchak could eat of it, and he couldn't eat afterwards. So even if Esav were to come afterwards and give him a delicious meal, Yitzchak couldn't touch it. He couldn't eat it. Ein maftir nach haPesach afikomen. Now, says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, the icing on the cake, and therein lies the chachma. Says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, the gematria of b'mirma is 287, which is the same gematria as afikomen. Bo achich b'mirma, he came with mirma with the afikomen. It was 287, and that was the chachma the Rashi is referring to, because ein maftir nach haPesach afikomen. Let me finish with one idea, very very beautiful story and idea. You know Mesilas Yesharim. The first paragraph of Mesilas Yesharim tells us that this world. Sorry.
Did not say the Parsha that he ate Esa's food.
Maybe from Yaakov it says no. Vayochal. No.
Asa gave him, but did he eat it?
We'll have to check. According to this pshat, hopefully it doesn't say that. I think it says with Yaakov. No.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, I would have to check. Okay. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. Okay? I think it says with Yaakov, not with Esav.
A dog, he wanted a dog. So the commander springs, he brought him a dog because he couldn't find anything because the bunch
You didn't allow him. Okay.
So he didn't need the dog.
For sure not, yeah. Okay, so let me just finish with this. Mesilas Yesharim Perek Aleph says that Olam Hazeh is one long test. We are sort of tested many times every single day. We have to make more choices. We have got Bechira to make Toiv and Ra. That's well known. But more than that, sometimes the big Nisayon comes our way. And if you think about it, 2 weeks ago in the Parsha in Vayera, Avram Avinu is Hashem Nisayis Avram. That's his big test. The Akedah, according to most, is the 10th and final test. That's his big Nisayon. Really, this is the test of Yaakov Avinu in this week's Parsha. The Gemara in Makkah says, in Chaftala, the last blat in Makkah says, this is, he doesn't let slander speak from his tongue. That's Yaakov Avinu, and it's referring to the episode in this week's Parsha. This is his big test. Why? Because Titan Emes LiYaakov. Yaakov Avinu is the embodiment of truth, And his nisayon was to have to sort of be a little bit sort of untruthful, to pretend to be Esav. Fine, that's his nisayon. That was his, I like to call it his Akedah moment. Now, and that's really the pasuk. Titanemes li'Yaakov chesed la'Avram. They were tested in this particular area. Now, there was, you're familiar perhaps, I saw a poster up outside, the excellent podcast Aubrey Hirsch has, History for the Curious. So he has excellent podcasts. And on the latest one, they interviewed Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. So I listened to this interview, and he tells a story about someone called Menachem Mendel Futterfass. Right? Now you may have heard of him. He was in London for some years. He's no longer alive. He died about 20 years ago. He was a character. He was a Chabad Chassid. He from Russia. He spent 8 years in the Gulag. He finally came out of Russia in 1963. He came here for a few years, and then he went to America. Then he went to Kfar Chabad in Israel, and he was a mashpia in the yeshiva there. And he would fabreng with the boys, and many times he would talk about his experiences in the Gulag and draw some very interesting life lessons. He tells the following story. One time he was in the slave labor, he was working there, and because he was rabbinic, he was Hasidic, he was a man of principle, he didn't eat treif, he didn't work Shabbos, he didn't eat chometz on Pesach, people admired him. And he was there with Russian peasants, and he wasn't there with, it wasn't Kfar Chabad, right? And people would confide in him because they realized he was an honest man of principle. So one day a Russian peasant said to him, I'm planning on breaking away tonight, on escaping from this place tonight. So Futterfass said to him, how can you escape? You've got guards here 24 hours, how can you escape? So he said, no, I've got a plan, because I've noticed when they change the shift, and the day guards go and the night guards come, there's a blind spot, there's 20 seconds, I can make a run for it, I can go. So Futterfass said to him, but the dogs, they've got these 2 wild dogs, they'll tear you to shreds. So he says, no, I've got a plan. I've thought of that. So, okay. That evening, Mendel Futterfass is sort of watching with half an eye what's going to be with his friend. And sure enough, the guards change shift, and this guy runs like this, he runs at breakneck speed through the forest, and it takes a minute until they notice the bullets are too late to reach him, but the dogs can. And they unleash the dogs, and the dogs run, tearing away to chase this fellow. As they get close to him, he's already quite deep into the forest, he takes this big chunk of meat. He managed to escape with a chunk of meat, and he throws it down, and suddenly the dogs stop, and they start eating the meat, and he continues running, and he had arranged a rendezvous with the underground further away, and he managed to get away. The dogs, 10 minutes later, come back to the camp with meat in between their teeth, and the head guard looks at the 2 dogs, sees the meat, understands what happens. He takes his gun out and he shoots both dogs dead. And Mendel Futterfass couldn't understand it. Like, these dogs are expensive. They've been trained for years. Okay, they messed up today, but it's a strange reaction. Why did he kill the dogs? A few weeks later, he had the opportunity. You can't ask the guard this. But a few weeks later, the guard had a few drinks, and he was in good spirits, and he thought, now's my time. So Futterfass went over to him and says, you remember a few weeks ago, the incident where that guy escaped and the dogs? Yeah. Why did you kill the dogs? So this is what the guard said to him. He said, you don't understand. These dogs have been trained for years for this moment, for a prison break, that they've got to run after an escapee. If they are distracted by a piece of meat at this moment in time, they're a waste of time. They're of no value to us. That's why I shot them. Says Mendel to the Bochum in the yeshiva, life is one big training school for our big nisayon. So we have daily nisayonos the whole time, but sometimes we get a bigger nisayon. In a way, life is a training ground for that nisayon. When the big nisayon comes, don't be distracted by a piece of meat or anything else that will help you fail in fulfilling your mission. That was his lesson to the boys. Very powerful lesson. So anyway, 5 ideas that we've got today. Opposite on behalf of, says the Meshech Chochmah, the establishment of Klal Yisrael is through the tefillah of one Yid for another Yid. And that's why we daven Barabim. That's that kapitel in Halukah in Pesukei Dezimra, the whole range of human suffering that we refer to. And Yimlech Hashem La'olam, we daven for each other in our Pesukei Dezimra. As Rav Nosson Tzvi said, that what do we daven for in Rosh Hashanah? Someone else. Rivka is barren, ki akora, he spelt with a vav. Why? To allude to the fact that she was actually barren for 12 years. The means in the end, why wasn't Esau wearing the hunting jacket? The answer is because Lefum Tzara Agra. Even Esau recognized it all has to do with effort, as per Rivka in the previous week's Parsha. The water comes up to greet her when it's not the mitzvah. She's just buying milk from the makolet. But when she's actually doing the mitzvah, then it's Vatishav Lechol Gemalov. That's why the Chidush Yarim says that Simchas Beis HaShoeva is not Simchas Nisuch HaMayim, because it's the Shoeva, it's the drawing of the water, which is the effort. That's the Ikka. And that's why the Imam says the mitzvah kala, that Shiluach HaKan is called the mitzvah kala, because Prat L'Mazuman you can't prepare, hasn't got the Hachana. It says, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zonfeld, Ba'achicha b'mirma, Rashi says, B'chachma, wherein lies the Chachma? Teretz is because it was Ein Maftirnach HaPesach Afikoyman, and b'mirma is Gematria 287, which is Afikoyman, and the final idea of Mendel Futzafas, that this was the big Nisoyan of Yaakov Avinu, and when the big Nisoyan comes, we should not get distracted even by a big chunk of meat. Have a good Shabbos.